All right, John. So I have a vSAN cluster. How do I protect against other failures like memory failures?
So by default, if you have a host that has failure with a DIMM, there's some different considerations. So if that DIMM, if you get what's called like a soft failure, ECC will mitigate that, and that's why we use ECC memory for vSAN hosts, unless you're strange and doing stuff with ARM or something. Uh, and then you have what are called hard failures. So these are unrecoverable failures, and there's different ways to try to mitigate hard failures. There are memory mirroring technologies. There are memory parity type technologies that some hosts will implement. They do carry overhead. They typically have some white papers discussing the performance implications of that. You can mirror all of the memory in a host to try to protect against failure. Generally less for virtual machines. A virtual machine, you probably just do FT if you want to protect that. But let's say we're worried about the kernel memory. So let's say, because this is where things get rough, is if just one virtual machine has to reboot because of a hard failure, you know, maybe whoever owns that VM might get angry with me, but it's one VM and HA is pretty quick. What happens if I have, if I have kernel memory fail? Well, in this case, we're potentially going to hit that lovely purple screen of death. We're going to crash that host. HA is going to do what it does best. It's going to reboot all those VMs somewhere else. But what if we wanted to protect against that? Well, there's a couple options. So one of which, let's say we have a whole DIMM failure. And so basic parity within the DIMM is not going to solve that. We could mirror all of the memory in the host, although that's quite expensive, particularly on larger hosts with lots of memory. There's also an additional option, and this is called reliable memory. This is often not necessarily the most well understood vSphere feature. It's been around for quite a while, I think since the 5.5 days. And what this does is you can identify, and this is set by the server platform. So you'll set this out of band in the IDRO, the ILAC, CIMC. You set a percentage of memory or a arbitrary number of gigabytes. So this might be 4, 8, or 12% of host memory to be mirrored and flagged as reliable memory. Now, that reliable memory, when that server boots up, vSphere will look at that and say, okay, I'm going to put important kernel processes in the reliable memory. So that way, if I have a DIMM failure and it hits memory that was being used by the kernel, it's not going to crash the host. It's going to keep on going. And I'm not having to spend 100% overhead for holistic. If you want to look at how much is being, if this is available, if you run the command on ESXCLI hardware memory get, it'll actually return how much reliable memory is there. There is an option. If you use a VMX flag, you can actually assign reliable memory to be used by VMs. I would, obviously do it with a very small amount. The kernel will get first stabs at that. There isn't like a DRS management, but what's cool about this technology is if you're in the type of environment where even just having a host fail and having HA kick in is going to be pretty sensitive, but you don't necessarily want to go full overboard with FT for your VMs. This is an interesting middle ground. So talk to your server vendors. Some of them support this, some of them do not. Some of them support this and fixed gigabyte reservations. Some of this you can select. There's a lot of differences in the implementation. I do have a blog on this. If you just search for VMware reliable memory, you'll probably find it. But this is yet another one of those just kind of low level things that's great about vSphere as an operating system is its ability to provide some very unique protections that frankly no other operating system can provide.